Have you ever seen someone change for a while? Or become a new person temporarily? Well, obviously, this is something that we've all seen and maybe even experienced ourselves. That kind of look at me, I'm all better moment can be confusing and discouraging, especially when it turns out to be temporary. Again. For some people, this kind of up and down roller coaster can push them to give up entirely. So what's going on with this? I mean, what's it going to take to have that all better moment that lasts? And what does it mean to get better anyway? We sometimes talk about recovery as if we're all on the same page about what it actually is. In fact, there are some really different ways of thinking about recovery and change out there. For instance, one especially common approach to change is trying to shape behavior in a new direction. If your great weakness is eating too many cookies, this would mean starting to taper back your daily dose of cookies, or even committing to a certain number of cookie-free days until you've formed a new habit. We call this outer change in Fortify, which can include anything from making adjustments to your schedule, diet, or exercise habits to serious improvements in your atmosphere and accountability at home. There's another way of approaching change, though, one that often gets overlooked, but that is critical to long-term success. More than shifting outer patterns or behavior, this other kind of change looks at what it takes to shift core desires. Some call this a change of heart. Others call it a core shift in our way of being. We'll be calling this inner change in Fortify. When comparing these two kinds of change, inner and outer, which have you focused on in the past? When most people talk about getting better with this struggle, they usually mean staying away from porn, right? An outer shift. Maybe this is why most recovery programs seem to have more of an outer focus on skills or tools. Now, that focus is very important, don't get us wrong, and definitely something that we care about here too. The Battle Tracker, for example, is a great tool to address outer change, as it helps sharpen our awareness of outer factors setting us up to keep struggling. But if and when outer change becomes our main or only focus, don't be surprised if we're in the same spot 1 year from now. And thinking back a year ago, where are you now? Same place? Better or worse? Does any of that relate to how you're approaching the problem and the change process? It can be surprisingly easy for any of us to get into a pattern of doing a lot of outside stuff to change without realizing that nothing deeper is actually happening. Think of the last time you or someone you know began a diet, with passionate attention to all the rules of what's okay to eat, but typically with less focus on any sort of deeper or desire-based change. How long do diets usually last? One study found 19 days on average, with 2/3 of people admitting to cheating after 5 days. That may be hard to believe, well, unless you've ever been on a diet. Maybe then it's not surprising that diets only rarely lead to long-term change. Statistics show that a high percentage of people who diet also gain the same or more weight back later on. That's not how we want your long-term experience with this fight to be. Especially since we know a lot more than we used to about what it takes for people to find long-lasting change. And what is that? Long-term, sustainable change is much more likely for you, and me too, if both inner and outer change start happening. Think back to the last time that you turned to porn after a period of time free from it. What we're suggesting is that perhaps one of the reasons for this kind of temporary burst of freedom may be that our outer change still hasn't been coupled with enough inner change. More than simply gritting our teeth for more resistance or practicing new habits, complete change virtually always cuts down to our very core desires. Wouldn't it be nice to get at the roots of this problem? If you're trying to get rid of a tree and keep cutting back at the small branches, well, new ones will obviously keep growing back, right? We may pat ourselves on the back and feel like we're doing something with all of our busy branch trimming, but more likely than not, we'll eventually exhaust ourselves and just let the branches grow over again. Oh well, this tree is probably just going to be my life. Or not. You see, it doesn't take a super genius to figure out what it takes to get rid of that tree for good. Hire the backhoe, Maybe throw in some dynamite and bam, it's gone, right? This is why we're digging deep in Fortify, going for something more than just simply cutting back the branches of our struggle. Instead of moving the chairs around on the Titanic, we're interested in getting away from the glaciers completely. That's why Fortify goes beyond just a bunch of actions to do, with everything aimed at moving us toward a fundamental positive change in life. This kind of change, at that kind of core level, is what we're going for. Let's be honest, though. Inner change can be harder to reach. That may be the reason that people talk about it less. But here's the thing. If we can find a way to get there, that's where recovery exists. It's important to take that seriously, so let's say it again in another way. If we don't find ways to move our inner attitudes, perceptions, and desires in a better direction, this may not be a battle we can win. None of this, of course, means that we won't continue to be excited about outer signs of improvement, which, as you know, we also want to keep celebrating along the way. Without solid outer progress, sometimes inner improvements can be thrown into turmoil. And without inner progress, as we've said, overall change can remain shallow. But what if we actually did both? Our own experience has been that both kinds of changes can reinforce each other powerfully, working as a dynamite duo to turbocharge our forward progress. That's why we spend so much time in Fortify on both levels, touching on both inner and outer change as key features of your plan moving forward. If it's not clear by now, we're convinced big time that transforming both inner and outer patterns is crucial to finding freedom for any of us, and that overlooking either kind of change sets us up for shallow progress. So what do you think? I mean, what would it mean if we really nailed both kinds of change? Are you ready to do what it takes to achieve deep and lasting freedom?